Hi everyone and welcome back to the Colour Cave and welcome to the June Scrawlrchallenge. The prompt this month is Summer Flourish and I think everyone is pretty excited about this month's box. We've got a lovely palette of the Aquafine paints to play with, which is going to really help us when we try to create that lovely, beautiful, warm, sunny feeling that we get from summertime. Welcome to summer in Scotland, hooray! Or not. I was really pleased to hear all your comments about how happy you are with this month's box. There seems to be quite a lot of people that is their first Scrawlrbox, so you guys have got an absolutely excellent box. Here we have the Yieldy sketchbook, and you can see I've got the original swatches from the unboxing video there just as a sort of reference point. I had a really firm idea in my head of what I wanted to do for this prompt, but I just wanted to figure out whether it was going to work better in portrait or landscape. So that's why I'm sort of sketching out these thumbnails, and you can see I had a little bit of go with my pencil there as well. I did have to Google some reference pictures of fountains. I wanted something that was going to be quite prominent in the middle of the picture, but fountains aren't really something I look at, so I thought I'd better have a little sketch out one of those just to see how it was going to go. So yeah, you know, fountains not something I do very often. The other thing I wanted to do as well is, although I've been drawing quite a lot of fish lately, I wanted to try out a few different poses for my fish just to see which one I was most drawn to, and there's only so many positions you can put a fish in, but I thought it was worth doing anyway. I wanted to get a kind of sense of movement, and so by sort of manoeuvring it around into various different positions, I wanted to see if there was more of a flowiness to a particular pose. I don't know. Anyway, that was kind of fun. I quite like drawing fish, it's weird. I was trying out a few colours here on my fountain to see what I wanted to do, and lo and behold I settled for Payne's Grey. There's no great surprise there really, considering I absolutely love it. So I'm just having a bit of a play about here, just trying to mix some colours to see what I'm getting and things, and decide whether my fish was going to be a goldfish. So on to the sketching. This was the first and only disappointment of this entire challenge and also of the box. This pencil, the erasable pencil, it's okay. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. When you're working on really textured paper like this, I found it very difficult to get any sort of level of detail in my sketch, because you're bumping over the paper. The laydown of the pencil itself isn't great. And the other problem that it caused me as well is when you erase the lines, unless you have pressed really hard to begin with, which is what you don't want to do, then it takes away the entire line. So when it comes to starting to watercolour, you can't see what you've done. So I gave up and just ended up leaving the lines in and hoping that the watercolour paint would eventually cover it. So I've mixed myself up a rather nice shade of brown here. And when it comes to watercolour, doing trees is like my favourite thing ever. I find it really relaxing, and I could literally draw trees all day. I decided not to have the two trunks the same colour, just to make it a little bit more, you know, interesting. I thought it would be a bit sort of uniform and matchy if I had them both the same. Yeah, that was fun. So I kind of did this a little bit back to front. I really should have done the background greenery first, but truth be told, I just got a little bit overexcited with myself when I started mixing the greens together. I used that Hooker's dark green, and I mixed in a little bit of yellow there for that grass in the foreground. So I decided to have some sort of, I don't know whether it's a sunrise or a sunset. I want to say sunrise, but I just think of like a really nice summer's morning when the sun rises really early and it makes you feel alive and it makes you want to get up and, you know, just go do stuff and enjoy being outside. And that was kind of like the feel I got from this shade of yellow. And yeah, I think it's quite cheery, and I'm kind of hoping that it does denote some sort of summery feel to it, because I would be kind of upset if it didn't. So here we are, a really watered down Payne's Grey. This was really more as a sort of marker for myself rather than actually starting to block in the colour of this fountain, and it was just so that I had it as kind of like a reference point so that I could, you know, like work round about it. And this paper is absolutely fabulous. I've actually added a pad of this watercolour paper to my Amazon wish list because I really enjoyed painting on it. I love the texture of this paper. So here's the first use of the Faber-Castell pencils, and I've just used it to add in a little bit of grain to our tree trunks. The next part is the most interesting part with the pencil, which we'll come to in just a minute. So here I am putting in the grass in the background. See, I should have done that first and then layered the darker grass at the front over the top, but no matter, it didn't really make much odds in the end. I deliberately wanted to use the pencil for the path because of the texture of the paper, because it gives you this lovely illusion of like a gravelly path. And I spied that straight away and I thought, yep, I'm definitely just having bare pencil in the path. And it's turned out exactly the way I wanted it to. So using the other pencil that is green, better, I just put in a few bits of grass and whatnot just to start to add in a little bit of detail into this foreground area. I wanted it to look really overgrown and lush, so I spent quite a lot of time layering up that grass and, you know, getting all those sort of different bits and pieces into it to make it that, you know, give it that sort of complexity. Now this point here, this is the turning point for me with watercolour. If I had plonked down that Payne's grey in the middle of a painting like this, even 3 months ago, I would have panicked like crazy. But, I knew what I was doing this time, and I knew that this paint was going to soak out towards the outside of the fountain and it would dry a little bit paler as well. You can see there as well at the top, I've put down the first layer of orange on my fish. And out of the whole picture, that was probably the part I was most worried about. I have no idea why, I have no logical explanation for that, but it was just worrying me a little bit. I think I was kind of concerned that I wasn't going to get enough detail in it. The other thing about this challenge that I struggled with, I wouldn't say it was a downside or a negative, but I really struggled with this paintbrush. It seemed to me that when you're loading the brush up with paint, it was either absolutely saturated, and when working in small spaces or on detail, it was the brush was far too loaded and you ended up with far too much paint and too much water. If you tried to take some of the paint off, the brush seemed to just go from that absolutely loaded to dry as a bone, to the point where the bristles were starting to split. So I found it difficult to get that sort of middle ground, and I don't know whether it's me and inexperience or whether it is this paintbrush, but I found it really hard. And it also was difficult then to get a really nice fine point to do some detail as well, because taking some of the paint off the brush was leaving it far too dry. So my water droplets aren't as good as I would like them to have been. I understand it's a travel set, you know, you're maybe not going to be painting something like this if you're out and about, but I just feel that had I had my own paintbrush, which is usually a Cotman number 6 round, I could have done a lot more with this picture. And I think I can't even say my skill level, I just think the picture would have looked better and I would have been able to handle it better. I do feel that some of my paint strokes are very amateurish because I didn't have the control that I wanted with this little brush. But that is a very minor point. Again, if I was more experienced, I'd probably have gotten a lot better with the brush. I would love to hear your comments if you do use Daler Rowney brushes anyway, or you found the same thing, or you think I'm talking rubbish. So back to my little fishy friend. Just before I started putting this detail in was that point where my picture just seemed to be in the ugly phase, and I had the paranoia of the detail in the fish got to me, so I ended up using the pencil just to, you know, to bring out some details. I began back to the gripe about the brush. I couldn't get a nice leaf shape. Now, if you're using a paintbrush that has a point on it like this one does, you should be able to angle the brush to give yourself a very simple leaf shape, and I was not able to achieve that because of the aforementioned paint load and also just the fact that the brush just seemed to give way and split if you put even any more than a slight hint of pressure on it. So I'm not particularly impressed with my leaves. It looks as if a 5-year-old has painted them onto my painting. And because of that, I actually didn't put in nearly as many as I would normally do, and I do paint a lot of trees. I just sort of gave up because I basically just got pissed off with it, pardon my French. So back with more detail and with my pencils, and I'm kind of going into the finishing touches here, but I just wanted to evoke this sort of lush greenery, you know, as a sort of flourish. But when I thought of the word flourish, I actually thought more of a gesture rather than thinking about something thriving, which is why I kind of wanted this fish in the middle, like, da-da, look at me. That's not a very technical description, but I'm pretty sure you know what I mean. Onto this Posca pen, which is, it's a Posca pen. I've used these all the time. It was pretty useless on a first application. I did make sure it was well mixed and that I had, you know, done everything I was supposed to do, but I had to wait for it to dry and go back over everything because it just wasn't showing up. And especially on my paranoid fish, I wanted to make sure that there was details of the scales and that sort of thing in there. So that was a bit of a disappointment. And again, I don't know whether it's maybe the combination of this type of paint and the paper, but it seems to me that Posca pens pop out better on some things than they do on others. And I have used Posca plenty of times in my other watercolour work, so I don't know what was with that. But it was fine in the end. I just had to go back over it, so it just took me a little bit longer. It was especially crucial for the water. If I hadn't had that white pen, I don't think I would have painted this picture, in all honesty. But yeah, you can see here where I'm adding in little bits and bobs. And it seems to go down quite opaque, and then when it dries, it just kind of goes, heh, which is why I had to go back over it. So what can you do? Anyway, that is me all done, so all that is left for me to do is to sign my picture, and there you have it. That is my summer flourish, and I'm quite happy with it overall. I hope you have enjoyed watching this, guys, and you can please tell me your thoughts on my challenge picture, and you could also let me know what you've done for your Scrawler challenge as well. That would be awesome, because you know I love to hear about stuff like that, and I love reading your comments too. The set of paints and the Posca pen will be up for grabs in the Colour Cave stash very soon, so if you're interested in these supplies, you can keep your eyes peeled for that. Thank you ever so much for watching, guys, and we shall see you soon back in the cave for another video. Bye bye for now.